What's up, everyone? Welcome to Dogs Down South on a Monday night. SEC Championship Week. We're there. It's this time of the year. I can't believe that it's this time of year. I can't believe that. I mean, I can believe. I guess with all the things that happen throughout week to week of the college football season, you look at the SEC Championship, and we've talked about it from top of the year to now, off season to now, how hard it was going to be to get to this week with no East West, with none of that stuff. And here we are, Georgia, number one toughest schedule in the conference, not only in the conference but in the college football arena. To some people's eyes, it's not, but it is statistically. Number one hardest schedule, and we sit here at 10-2. Playing against the Texas Longhorns in the SEC Championship. Welcome tonight. If you're joining tonight, we're live, Facebook, Dogs Down South. You can also go and follow us on YouTube. Trying to get to 1,000 followers. Make sure on Apple Podcasts, we are up 24 hours later, so you can enjoy that later on in the week before you get ready for this Saturday's matchup. SEC Championship, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta, Georgia, 4:00 p.m. Let me bring on my man, Richman. I'm losing my voice. What's up, Richman? How are you?
How you doing, man?
Yeah, good, man.
You lose your voice after last weekend.
Yeah, right. I was listening to say I lose my voice, and you can come save the day because I'm about 8 heart attacks in. I had a heart attack every overtime. So
yeah, I was heated.
Yeah, man. A lot to talk about. We're definitely going to talk about it. We're going to recap Georgia Tech a little bit. But it's SEC Championship, and this is one of those weeks where, if you're a dog fan and you're watching week to week, this is the ultimate goal. So a lot of teams can look at the SEC Championship and go, "Man, I really don't. If we had to, don't choose to be here." I think 2 weeks ago we would have said, "Okay, like we're going to be sitting here. We play Georgia Tech, and we sit one out." And then or sit a couple weeks out, get healthy, and then we go play a home game, maybe an away game. I don't know. But instead, we sit here with a big opportunity on Saturday to take on a Texas team who, in a lot of facets of the game, when we played them during the year in Austin, we owned a lot of that game. And we're going to definitely talk about that. So super exciting week. Lots to talk about, lots going on. We're going to go on at least one more time this week. Tomorrow night, I know we're going to do a college football playoff show. Not that we care, because it doesn't matter. Tomorrow night doesn't really matter. We just get to kind of look at it for show. Saturday right now matters for Georgia, but I would love to see, and Richman, we'll start it off with this tonight. I would love to see where some of all these teams that Friday night, as Georgia was going into 8 overtimes and surviving, I would love to see where all these teams that fell because they didn't survive, to teams that might have not been as big of a matchup even as Georgia Tech. I'd like to see where they go to. How did you feel when I know you watched a lot of the games. You watched Michigan obviously beat Ohio State. You watched South Carolina down Clemson. And also
Miami,
the third upset of the night. Miami getting beat by Syracuse. We called that upset.
Yeah, we called that one.
What'd you think about all those outcomes?
I was really surprised with Michigan. I didn't. But that's just like the Georgia Tech game, man. It's a rivalry, and everything's out the window. I actually was a little disappointed with Alabama Auburn. I thought Auburn would have a little bit more fight in them, but they got blasted.
It was weird because I watched that game too. It was out there. It was out there for the taking. I just feel like, even in there was 2 games where I felt like for Auburn, as well as for Texas A&M, there was points and part of the game that was out there for both of those teams. I mean, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but you look at this Texas team, they gave Texas A&M so many opportunities to take advantage of. They fumbled the ball on the goal line. They had the pick 6. They had the fumble. They had the block punt that could have been returned. I thought he was going to return it.
Yeah.
17-7. I mean, I was listening to another podcast today, and they were like, and the guys were like, this was a total and utter beatdown. And I was like, not really. This wasn't. I mean, Texas A&M had so many opportunities. I would think it's a beatdown when you look at Texas defense versus A&M's offense. But I think when you look at all these games, there was one thing that got exposed.
Well, the big thing, Texas's offense just is not explosive.
Right. You took the
And
word.
and I think that's going to play to our favor.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into that later, but we'll talk a little bit about what worked and why it worked.
No, I agree. You took the words out of my mouth. If you look at each team that you look at that and you feel like, you look at Miami, and I feel like what happened to Miami in that loss was their offense kind of started to die off. They came out so hot. They scored 21 of those 42 points or so in the first quarter and a half. And then it was like Syracuse, Fran Brown. I'm so happy for him. Last year, obviously secondary coach for Georgia last year, him and Muschamp. But I was so happy for him, and to see them make those adjustments, it reminded me a little bit of Kirby and the Dogs because he made those halftime adjustments. And Miami's offense was not as potent as it was in the first half. Same way with Ohio State. I mean, how do you go in? You got a home game. You got a $20 million roster, and you can only put up 10 points against a Michigan team that if you're ever going to get Michigan, this was the year to do it.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And then you look at, we talked about Texas A&M, lack of explosive plays. If we look at everything, I think that was it. It was the offenses either lacked explosiveness or they didn't have enough in them to make it the entire game. There wasn't enough, and I would call it sustainable drives.
Yeah, I think I'm not really discouraged about playing Texas again. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, we can't win twice in a season. And I don't know about that. I think this Georgia team is probably the strangest team we've ever seen. And they literally own the fourth quarter. They definitely own the second half, but they literally own the fourth quarter. And that makes them dangerous. Whoever's got to play them, it makes them dangerous.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, a lot of these guys, they put the pedal down, and then in the second half, they want to coast. Well, if you coast on Georgia in the second half, you could very well get passed up.
Yeah. And, I was sitting there that night, and I didn't go to bed until about 2 a.m., and I was just sitting there thinking, and I was like, we still haven't seen – I don't know if Tennessee was still the complete game. I look back at that game, and I will say the Tennessee game was one of the better complete games. Texas, we tried to –
Well, Texas was an ugly game. I mean, we had 3 interceptions, the turnovers. Didn't we have a fumble? So we had 4. I know 4 turnovers. I mean, the thing
we ran the ball.
What won that game really was our defense.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing that made that defense work. We got pressure on yours all day long with 4 down linemen.
Yep.
And if we can run that, if we can do that again, I mean, I think the day is ours. Our offense has really come a long way. So I'm not afraid. I think it's going to be a good game. I think really we're going to outclass them. I just don't think they're that dominant. I know the committee loves them because they're 9-1, but like you say, I mean, nobody wants to talk about strength of schedule but us. But you go back and look at the strength of schedule. Georgia's battered and proven themselves.
You got to think, man. You got to look at Texas and go, if it's close, who has the upper hand? Because, you can look at Texas and you can go, well, we played Texas A&M. Guys, I will say that I did say at the beginning of the year, Texas A&M, I had a lot of hope for Texas A&M because I like Texas A&M. I liked Elko at Texas A&M. I thought they were going to have the exact season they had. I thought they were going to win a good amount of games. They were going to drop 3 or 4. I didn't think they would be sitting in there with a possible spot for the SEC championship.
Yeah, I didn't think that either. I thought they were going to be better than they were and improve some with a new coach and new attitude, but I didn't expect them to be contenders for the SEC championship.
Yeah. Let's go back and let's hit some highlights of the Tech game before we get into Texas. Just to kind of put them to bed. Obviously, 8 overtimes. Dan Jackson, play of the year. I mean, we all of a sudden want to make it a targeting call. You sent me a text message with targeting, and I almost muted you and deleted you. Dan Jackson, play of the year, man. I gotta say yes. That is the play of the year and he's made some of these plays all year long.
Dude, that's the kind of play I love, because in my world targeting doesn't exist.
Right.
I mean that's in the realm of wokeology. I'm not into that.
Right.
But he put his head down and hit the ball with it, and that's old school fumble right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're blessed they didn't call it, because they could have. You never know how they're going to call it. They can't even accurately define targeting. Yeah. Sometimes they look at it and they'll say it's targeting, and sometimes they'll look at it and it was definitely targeting, what they call targeting, and they don't call it. They can't even figure it out themselves. It's a stupid call.
Yeah, I tried to have this throughout the game and at the end of the game. Like, I tried to have the utmost respect for Brent Key, but I kept losing it, man. Like, I kept losing it. I get it's a tough loss, right? I get it. But, like, you're the leader of this team. This team has come a long way. You can see the definition of the improvement on the field. Kirby gave that respect to him. I went on my live that night and I said, I was prepared numerous times to come on and congratulate Georgia Tech. I wasn't giving up, but I was saying, what in my mind do I say? Because Tech fans, they love to take everything out of context that's happening, and they would have never thought that happened, right? They would have never thought that would have happened. But Brent Key, like, I think it was so, it overcame him in a way that he was like, man, we're up 17-0. We're where we need to be. He had started having these aspirations of, what does this look like for me and the organization? Tech beating Georgia. He has already seen these things rolling through his mind and rolling through, Facebook feeds and news feeds left and right. And then all of a sudden this starts to unfold, and he's starting to see this unfold, and then it happens. And then, he has the emotional ending, which I get it. He stood out there, and I'm sure I know why. He stood out there and he watched Georgia celebrate, awkwardly, stood in the middle of the field with the state patrol officers and watched the celebration. I know why, because next year it's another set of drama for his team, right? Last year I stood out there and watched them, celebrate, and it's another layer of drama.
But I'm going to tell you something. I just don't think it's a good strategy to build a program based on beating one team. Mm-hmm. I think it's a better strategy to build a system to beat all teams. And when we take one on the chin, we get our head down and we focus on what's coming next and not fixate on that one, that we dropped. Because if you fixate on that, man, it'll eat you alive,
Mm-hmm. Funny how that works, huh? This is Georgia Tech now that, is looking at, I don't even know, they're bowl eligible. Yeah, they were 7-4. I guess they go to 7-5 now. They're bowl eligible. But you look at Georgia Tech, who basically has admitted to some form of practicing, Georgia looks the entire year. You look at Ole Miss. These are two teams that are focusing on, one avenue of how they want their team to look and be like. And if we can just get these guys, we can change our season. We can change our perspective of the team. And both of them, they didn't lose to Georgia. They didn't lose to Georgia and kill their season. They lost to other teams and killed their season.
They'll probably lose the bowl game too, because this took so much out of them. Right. I mean, that's kind of what happened to FSU last year, right?
Right.
I mean, they didn't even show up. They were emotionally done.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but Brent Key did call for the targeting on Dan Jackson. He said they should have seen that, and I don't know.
Well, they should have seen all the chop blocks and the holding, and there was pass interference on both sides, and there was some targeting on that they didn't call that would have gone our way. Blah blah blah. I mean,
right.
I agree. We all like to blame it on the refs when we lose. So
I agree.
That's the biggest sob story in the history of sports.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we want to look at on offense that we just can't happen next week. Can't happen, right? You look at the offense, and I'm going to say it because I don't want to be a coward, but the play calling was much better the second half, was much better the fourth quarter, I should say.
Well, can I
Very
speak on
sketchy
that?
play calling first, second, and third quarter.
I'm going to call Kirby out on this, and it may not be Kirby. It may be Kirby and Bobo. But I think Kirby and Bobo decided that they were going to run the ball down Tech's throat and be more physical and impose their will on them. And I'm sorry, but we're a finesse team. Yeah. We haven't imposed our will on anybody all season. Not anybody. We haven't destroyed anybody. We are a finesse team, and when we get rolling with our finesse, it works.
Yeah, very good comment.
But the other problem, they came out and they ran the ball in the first quarter and had a little bit of success. And if they had started mixing it up and finessing that passing game, it probably would have worked. But they stuck with the run, and it started failing. And I think that affected everybody's psyche. Mm-hmm. And it took until almost the fourth quarter to get their heads back in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Very well said. And even when you say it now, it makes more sense than what you were explaining through text. So I agree with that. But I also will tell you that it didn't help that our receivers just plain out couldn't catch the ball in some avenues of the game.
Dude, I think we're going to see that the rest of the season. If we win the national championship, they're going to drop 3, 4, 5 balls in that game that are going to make us lose the rest of our hair. And I ain't got much left.
I mean, we still won it, and I guess that was the way it was supposed to happen. I mean, how awesome was it that Nate Frazier, who is just a guy that I feel like has come on so strong for Georgia, has really put the team, him and Cash have put the team in some avenues on their back. So many catches out of the backfield, third and 5s, 3rd and 8s by Cash that have just toted the team. And so many runs by Frazier that have just put us into situations where you make those 2nd and 4s and 3rd and 3s so much easier. And then plays like that where, I mean, it's hard to be 8 overtimes in and hear your name called and know that there's going to be a hole for a minute second. And even though it looked that easy, he made it look very easy because that hole had been closing really, really fast on the goal line. Oh, yeah. Ask Carson Beck because it closed on him really quick 2 plays before that.
Yep. Hey, here's a tidbit. In 1978, I was sitting on about the goal line in the west end zone and saw Buck Ballou throw the 2-point conversion to Amp Arnold and beat Tech by 1 point.
Unreal.
It was the freshmen showed up, and then in this game, who showed up?
Freshmen showed up.
I mean, 2 games for the ages right there.
It was fitting, man. Frazier's done. I mean, yeah, he's young. He's had a couple fumble problems, but I will tell you, when he carried the ball the other night, you could tell he was carrying I don't know, man. There wasn't nobody ripping the ball out of his hands.
Well, like Kirby always says, by this end of the season, they're not freshmen anymore. They're experienced. Yeah. So
yeah,
he looked.
I mentioned Buster Faulkner, man. Obviously, Buster was control. He did quality control for Georgia. Was with Kirby for a while. Very, talented coach. Really great offensive mind. He seems to be dialed into Georgia. It's a comfort zone for him. He really had a great game plan, man. We were going against. It's hard because the thing is Georgia's defense isn't going against, a bunch of coaches that they know, but Georgia Tech's, staff is going against a ton of coaches they know. Right. And so you look at schemes, you look how they do things, and, Buster was smart about it. He had a different scenario, but he knew where he was going to attack. Last year, he attacked east and west. This year, I feel like everything was based off of the middle and the heart of the line. If he could gash the middle and the heart of the line, then he used east and west to keep our eyes open.
Yeah,
and I think that's what got us in trouble.
A lot of motion to position and pull people out. And but I'll tell you what was fascinating was they kept we played this zone defense all night. And, they would – and we stacked the box. I mean, we couldn't stop the run, and we stacked the box, which is disappointing. there's reasons we couldn't stop the run, but the passing, man, they would flood those. The way you beat the zone is flood it, and they had more receivers out there than we had people covering, and
Mhm.
they just picked it apart. And some of those throws were incredible. But the way that they get, and I don't think Texas is not going to be able to run an offense scheme like this because they don't have a quarterback that can run. But we had somebody accounting for the quarterback, and they did a lot of power. They did a lot of dives, and then they did zones. And our defensive linemen were on their heels. I mean, they didn't know which way. They didn't know what was coming.
Right.
And
Yeah. You look at a team. I'll give the Dog fans a little, I guess, a little gleam in their eye. I was listening to a show. What are we today? Monday, Sunday afternoon. I was listening to a show and it made total sense. I don't know if you saw when the times when Georgia decided when Georgia Tech did decide to just straight out pass. It was hard for them. It was hard for Tech to do that. Why? Because if you look at the line is not built to block that way. That paid dividends for us in overtime because some of those plays where they just, they were out of, there were plays that they couldn't run and scheme from where they were out on the field because it was not built that way. So Georgia would have read into a lot of it. So they had to get into 4 and 5 wide out sets. They were running the running back in and out of the series. It helped a whole lot. I will say we got beat a lot up front in some areas in the run blocking, but it paid off dividends in overtime because they couldn't block any kind of pass rush. You saw it. We chose to blitz 3 out of the last 5 defensive 2-point conversions, and we got pressure quick.
And the other thing too, this was impressive. When we knew it was a run-in play and they were going to dive, we stuffed them. On the 4th and 1 down on the goal. we stuffed them, and so our guys are capable. But when they're confused and they're back on their heels, it's a different day. And they pushed them around for 3 quarters, playing all that confusing different types of run game and intermittent. And they mixed in passing, and then you had the quarterback to account for. So they were on their heels too much.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier too, sometimes I just wonder why they just don't say, "Hey, just penetrate and let our linebackers fix it."
Right.
But we don't play ball like that. So
yeah, I like what you said about finesse, and I think we're capable of pushing people around. But I think with the injuries we've had to the defensive line, the offensive line, I think we're having to game plan around playing smarter, not harder. Right. So we're having to really scheme a game up to go. Tate Ratledge is not going to push people around like he used to. We're doing a lot more stunting because I agree with what you're saying earlier. Were there times when we should have just ran a 5-man front, got a really good push, tried to get just in-depth push? But I do think that there's a method to every madness. And when you look at what happened and you look at the offensive scenario, something like this happened with a little team called Mississippi State right before we played Texas last time. And everybody was like, what is our defense doing? Why do we look this way? What is going on? And then the next thing we have a showing that we had against Texas. And I think our defense is just, you're going to have offenses that we're going to have to adjust to. We're going to have to figure out how to make things
I think
happen.
We definitely match up better with Texas. And if we can put pressure on yours with a 4-man front, we're going to have a nice day.
I agree. Let's hop into Texas. So Georgia Tech 44-42, 8, man, 8 overtimes. But guess what? We survived. There were some teams that would have loved that 8 overtime victory, but didn't get it. We're going to talk about them. We're not going to pick any games tonight. Remember, we're going to go live tomorrow night for the playoff show, and we're going to pick all the championship games at that time. So we get to talk a little bit more about them because there's not going to be as many games this weekend. So it's definitely a showcase this weekend, and Georgia's a part of it. So let's talk about what were the keys to victory against Texas last time. So I have a couple of notes down here. One of the main things, we've hit it already a couple of times, but let's unpack this a little bit. 4-man pressure was really, really crucial against Texas. you know, and also the defense getting off quick, right? I even said something. I remember I went back and listened to the Texas podcast where we went, and I said something. I said, you know, at least part of the team has to get off fast, right? I think the defense got off fast. I think we created a lot of different avenues for our. I think Jalen Walker had a huge game against Texas last time. I think C.J. Allen had a great game. Michael Williams. I mean, we're somewhat healthier than we were when we played them last time. I know last time Tate Ratledge was on the sideline watching this game, so he'll get a chance to actually be in this game this time. But let's look at four-man pressure. Why is it so key against Texas, Richman, to be able to get pressure with four? Because it was something that, if you look a week before that, we were running a lot of cover zero and we were getting burned off of it.
Well, you know, if you can get pressure with four, that's going to give you. I mean, Texas is going to throw the ball, so if you got a pass defense, and if you can get to the quarterback with four, you're going to have more people to defend the pass. So you're not going to get situations like we had with Tech where we're stuck in zone, you know, and we've got two guys and there's three guys in that zone. So hopefully we don't see anything like that.
You also think that, you know, Georgia, we've said this, which that's what shocked me too, but I know why we did it. I don't think Kirby wanted as many people running away from the ball, knowing Haynes King could beat you the most with his legs. So I think that was strategic, but you might be right. Did we stay in it too long? Did we mix it up? But the biggest thing about Texas is having that shell. We talked about that shell last time. Mm-hmm. Giving them the deep ball is something that Texas plays into very well. You can't let Isaiah Bond, you can't let some of these receivers hit you over the top. I think you got to make Ewers make some hard throws with a lot of pressure in his face. And I think that helped them a ton. And so you got to know that Texas is going to look at this tape. And you know, Sark, he's going to say, well, common sense would say if we did this the opposite way, we're going to win, right? I don't know. I mean, I do think Texas had some success running the ball in certain areas, but not the entire game. But I do think four-man pressure, once again, is a staple in what we have to get accomplished. And I'm hoping that Christian Miller, hoping that he can get back. It was good to see. I mean, we're talking about the defensive side of the ball now, but it was nice to see Rod Robinson out there. Maybe we get Branson back. Maybe we have a little bit more of a stable of backs. I don't know about ETN. I'm hearing ETN's farther away than people are thinking, and then it's being noted. But you know, the good news is Frazier has been doing a really good job. You know, I think Robinson did a great job, but I agree with what you said earlier in the text thread. You said, man, you got to look at Robinson and be like, you know, you hadn't been in there all year. We were giving you the ball on some key downs and some key position things where you're just not used to seeing that as quick as you should see it. And so we live and learn, hopefully. But four-man pressure is one of them. Also, disguising defensive coverage, right? This was huge for us last time. Coming off the Alabama game, I think we took a little piece out of Alabama's playbook when we really threw Ewers a lot of different looks. Now, obviously, Texas is going to be looking at this film and scouring it from top to bottom. So how can Georgia continue to disguise defensive coverage in a different way than they did it in Austin?
Man, that's a good question. Because I don't know a lot about the defensive backs. I was closer to the linemen.
Right.
But yeah, hopefully they're going to be able to mix that up and keep that. And maybe it seemed like Ewers he just didn't have time to read a lot of times because they didn't give it to him, you know, their situation. So it may just be that. Yeah. They're not giving the look away until right before he starts his count.
Yeah. This is a healthier defensive line, too. I mean, Michael Williams, you know, I can't even – he was in this game, right? But he was definitely not as healthy. Smile Munden did not play in this game.
Munden didn't play, so we're going to be a little bit healthier, too, for sure.
I think and we'll talk about this in a minute, but I think Humphreys was a problem at Tech. I mean, against the Texas game, and he won't be in this game. I think Daniel Harris has done an incredible job over there taking him over, and I think you're going to see a little more Ellis, maybe of a little Ellis Robinson spelling him over there. I think you might see. I mean, it's tough because at the end of the day, like this secondary has now, like you said, we're in this part of the year where this secondary is we're looking at them to be grown men, and I think we're seeing that. We're seeing who's going to step up, who's going to cover well, and Texas is going to try to do the opposite of what they did. But hopefully, our coaches, I mean, you got to trust and look at it and go, we have 2 losses on a schedule that if you'd have told me we were going to be 10-2 and lose to Bama and Ole Miss and be in the SEC championship game, but lose 2 and have the number 1 toughest schedule in the country, I might sound wrong about this. A lot of people said it's not this, it's just how we looked, but I'd be fine with that. I mean, wouldn't you be fine with that if we were where we were at right now?
Oh yeah. Hey, let me ask you a question. So after watching the Tech game, do you think it's possible they're going to come out and try to establish the run heavily?
I just don't know if that's how they're built, man. It's a very pro style offense. Very pro style offense.
Yeah.
I mean, Arch. There's some plays for Arch in there, but they're not.
Yeah,
they're nothing like
Arch
that.
can run, but he's not a.
He's not going to be able to take the blows that.
He's not what I would consider that athletic quarterback.
Definitely.
I mean, we found out our quarterback can run.
Yeah. We called his number a few times.
That doesn't make him an athletic quarterback.
Exactly. No, 100%. So 4-man pressure, disguising defensive coverage. I think on offense, I think when we look back at this, Carson had 3 interceptions. If you can just, I mean, the knock on wood game is coming right here for me, but you look at Carson and his ball protection. By the way, I don't know if you saw the stat for Carson, but I saw it today. He ended up leading the SEC in touchdown passes.
Yeah, 28.
Crazy, right?
He also leads with interceptions. So I think that if his interceptions are done, if he's clean and we could catch some balls, I think we're going to be just fine.
Yeah. I like it.
Especially if he needs to get hopefully he gets the tight ends rolling earlier in the game. I mean, we didn't really see that in the Tech game until the second half.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree.
Of course, we didn't see the offense on the field much until the second half.
I totally agree.
Actually,
we got time.
The offense on the field much until we got to the overtimes.
It got to the point where, we wondered how many times we would actually get possessions. I mean,
that's going to be a big thing in this game against Texas, because if our offense plays like they did the first time around and we get that pressure and we can get off the field in, 3 downs,
right?
Then we get the ball,
right?
And if we can, exactly. and if we can sustain drives, that turns the tables compared to where we were last Saturday. Yeah,
I agree, and I think when you look at this offense that you see from Georgia up against, Texas. Here's the thing, man. You look at the lighter part of their season, you once again can call it out and say, like, after Georgia, who did Texas play after Georgia? I think I still have this. The schedule up, man. Let's see if I can pop this up. And just curious to check this out. I mean, who else did they play? So Texas had to go after Georgia. They had to go play Vanderbilt in Nashville, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Let's look at records.
And they didn't play well against Vanderbilt. I don't remember the Florida. They didn't play well against Arkansas. I don't remember Kentucky. How did they do against Florida?
So basically, the teams they didn't play a team this year besides Georgia. The most losses a team the least amount of losses that a team had on their entire schedule this year was A&M, and they ended up having 4 loss team. The one closest to that would be probably Vanderbilt. And if you remember correctly, Texas for 3 quarters had a little bit of a problem in Lexington with a 4-8 Kentucky team.
Right.
And I know we're not. I just know that a lot of people have called Texas just this most complete and elite team, and it's just hard to understand that when you look at the schedule they've played and you look at the schedule Georgia's played. it's just really hard, man. One of the hottest teams in the ACC, whether you like it or not, was Georgia Tech coming in to the end of the year. There was only a handful. Clemson, you would say, was probably pretty hot. You would say SMU was hot, and you would probably say Georgia Tech was hot because they beat Miami and they just came off. They had a what, 4-game win streak coming in. So you look at a Georgia Tech team who was 7-3 coming in.
Hey, let's look at last year. We were criticized all season for having the cupcake schedule. And guess what? We walked right into the SEC championship undefeated.
Yeah, and it didn't pay off for us.
No, it didn't pay off.
It didn't pay off for us at all. Battle tested is in this 12-team playoff. Battle tested is huge. Let's we're going to look at some playoff stuff. Leave some of this on the board tonight, but let's hear what Kirby had to say a little bit in his live presser today. It was a short one, but let's hear what he had to say real quick. Let me add him to the. Oh my gosh! Here we go. Technology.
Good job. First year in our conference. I don't know why I feel like they've been in the conference forever because of them playing in the playoffs last year, and they had the series with Alabama. So, you've seen them on tape, and their team is built like an SEC team. He's done a tremendous job. Their defense is one of the best in the country. They've got explosive skill players. Did a tremendous job in the portal. Quarterbacks playing at a high level, and they've replaced a big group of backs who the backs they've got are doing a great job. So all in all, should be an exciting, challenging SEC championship.
Yeah, Coach, in what ways do you think your football team's gotten better since that first matchup with those guys? And same question to Texas. What areas have they improved since you guys have faced?
I don't know how to answer that. It doesn't seem like that long ago that we played them. I guess it was mid-October or so that we played those guys. And, there are areas that we have played better in and then areas that we haven't. And it's almost gone both ways in terms of we've had games we played better in certain areas and then games we didn't play better in certain areas. We offensively, we didn't run the ball real well against these guys. We kind of succeeded off of their mistakes, their turnovers, and we scored points off of their turnovers. But we've played well offensively at times since, and we've played well defensively at times since, but we've also not put a complete game together. And that's probably what we're trying to do best now is play our best when our best is needed. As far as them, they've improved in a lot of ways. I think defensively they've been at a high level the entire year. That's not, I think offensively they've run the ball. They've committed to running the ball, being really physical. They've had 30 and 40 carries, runs in several games, and a commitment to that and a physicality, while also being able to throw the ball really efficiently. They've got the weapons to do both.
Coach, I know you see it in the NFL, all the time, but what are the biggest challenges of playing a team for the second time in a year?
They're the same challenges they were the first time you played them. I'm a big guy at statistics and philosophies and things like that. In the NFL, you play everybody in your division twice, and then you might meet up with them again in the playoffs. So, when you flip a coin, there's no greater chance that it's heads or tails the second time you flip it. And I'm not comparing our game to a coin flip. I'm just saying that the previous matchup does not determine this matchup. You can't overstate that to your players because the flow of that game was different in the first 3, 4, 5 drives. And then, after a turnover, it went the other way a little bit. And then momentum swung throughout that game, and momentum is going to swing throughout this game. It's just the way these games are. It's more about who executes well, who tackles well, who doesn't turn the ball over, and who has explosive plays. That's what it comes down to every game.
Sorry, it was muted right there. So Kirby mentions, and it's what we talked about a minute ago. It's when you look at the way this game pans out, a lot of fans are like, man, we're playing Texas again, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think Kirby has a lot to say there because he's like, in the NFL, you play teams twice, and it's not one of those things that's unheard of. If anything, maybe it's more of a challenge for the team that got beat because you can try to overcompensate. You don't understand that the first 5, scenarios went different than these 5 scenarios can go. What I do know is that this is the elements are a little different in this game. This is the SEC championship game. This is the first SEC championship game for Texas. This is a stage that, in my opinion, is a little bit of a bigger stage than the Big 12. Everybody watches the SEC championship. You look at this being in Georgia's backyard. This is when we played them last time. We were in a very, very hostile Austin, Texas. I mean, Austin was jacked for this game. If you remember, I think it was a sweep that was on game day. Texas was going to win that game. It was picked by every single person on game day.
Yep.
Georgia comes in 2.5-point underdogs again. I don't have that betting line, but I do think that Georgia definitely was the underdog in Austin, and it was a very similar point spread. Am I wrong?
I think it's 2.5 or 3.5 right now.
Yeah,
we're the underdog.
But I think we were the underdog by as much as 4.5 or 5.5. I think it got down to 4.5 on the first one. And a lot of that was because we were in Austin, right? So a lot of things that you look at this game and are a different scenario because, it's a little more comfortable in your backyard sometimes. Texas did go to Texas A&M, hostile environment, had to play. And I think Texas A&M has one of the best environments in college football. Right alongside LSU and lately, Athens. There's a handful of schools that have a really great environment. But this is a different game scenario in so many ways. And we'll have plenty of time during the week to get into it more in depth. We'll pick the winner tomorrow night. But it's going to be a good game. And I do agree with you, Richman. Like I'm okay with this because let's talk about scenarios. So we're going to see the playoff committee. And I know we're going to give 10 minutes to this and call it a night, but I know you always love talking about the playoff committee because I think people are falling in line with you right now. This committee is absolutely unpredictable, but I'm not talking about in one of those smart and clever ways. It's like, do these guys just sit at the bar and just hammer a few, old fashions and then just go in there and, kind of remember what they saw and then pick some teams and go about it? Because if that's the case, this 12-team playoff doesn't make any more sense than the BCS or the 14 playoff made. It's just if you're not gonna put the best 12 teams in, regardless of their, I even disagree with some avenues of the conference champions, because there's gonna be a Big 12 team that's possibly in that spot that could very well get blown out. I mean, if you're the 5th team in that bracket, you might have the best draw, right? I mean, you could. But let's just see what can happen tomorrow night. Obviously, you look at Oregon; they won pretty handily. Texas ended up beating Texas A&M. Boise, I think Genty ran for 270 something yards. Miami loses. All right, here's the first question: does Miami fall out tomorrow night, Richman, or they stay in just kind of low?
I think they stay low.
Okay.
And Ohio State obviously is in.
Remember that. Hold on. Remember that. So you got Ohio. Miami staying in but low. So then you got your next team up is Ohio State. You got them falling out completely, or you got them falling low, or do low. We see this stupid thing where they fall one spot?
Yeah, right.
I mean. What can you say about Michigan, dude? I mean, Michigan is having the worst season of any Michigan team in the past 10, 15 years. So what do you look at? What do you look at as that caliber of a loss? I mean, I guess it's no different than Notre Dame, right?
They do not look at it like that.
It's unbelievable that they don't, though. Because what does that make any sense?
You're not going to like what I'm fixing to say, but I think that they have one agenda. And that is to stack this thing where the SEC does not get another national championship. So they will stack these brackets to punish the SEC. The SEC teams will play the hardest games, in my opinion.
So here's okay. So let's say Ohio State stays in. So then you got Notre Dame. I'm sorry. Let me go in order. You got Penn State. So Penn State has now moved into the Big Ten championship versus Oregon now. Now,
Right.
do you feel like Ohio State or Penn State is going to would have given Oregon more a run for their money?
Actually, I think Ohio State.
Yeah, I think they would, but I mean, I'm glad that somebody saw a human version of an Ohio State team, because that's a $20 million roster that everybody would look at Georgia and go, well, what Georgia team's going to show up? Well,
Right.
I mean, that's a $20 million roster. What Ohio State team's going to show up? I mean, anybody would take Georgia's 8 overtime win over losing at home to Michigan, who's, if I'm not mistaken, was unranked at the time, and it was a 21-point underdog. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. Tech was a 19.5, but I would say this. You look at this rival, it should not have gone that way, man. Like Georgia Tech, I don't say it should have gone that way, but if you look at that on paper, that technically was, it went into overtime at 27 all.
Well, I
right?
contend that it would have gone differently if they had not gone into ground and pound them. Once they established a little bit of success with the run, they mixed that
Right.
up with some finesse. I think we would have. I think we'd have been off to the races, and I think we would have outclassed them. And I don't think it would have been in overtime. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. So that drops Indiana to 7. Indiana's done. So is Indiana in? I think Indiana's safe, right?
I think Indiana's in.
Yeah. So then you got 8. You got Notre Dame. I've never agreed with Notre Dame. Never agreed with it. We all know why they're in there. But if they're going to fight the cause of Notre Dame, now you got Alabama, who was on the outside looking in the week before last. I am so sorry. I pulled a real old bracket.
I think Alabama's out. Ole Miss is out. BYU's out.
So my thing is this. So who is your SEC? So let's look at Ohio State. Oregon. Oregon, without giving it away, because I don't want to give away picks. So let's just say Oregon is in. We won't talk about championship game winners yet. We're talking about tomorrow night. Let's say they have Oregon in, Texas in, Boise's going to be in, because I think Arizona State is still right now your possible 12th team. Who does Arizona? I think Arizona State will be playing Iowa State.
Yeah.
In the Big 12 championship.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got to think. I mean, I don't know, man. Iowa State is a little more battle tested in big games. You got to think Arizona State's going to be playing its first big game in a while. Dillingham. I don't know, man. We'll see. But let's say Arizona State, because we've had them in there at 12. And so your third spot, I mean, Clemson's going to be playing SMU. Clemson's defense, very suspect to a running quarterback, but this is a more pro-style offense than SMU. So let's just say, let's shake it up. You want SMU, because if you give it to Clemson, you're giving 2 spots to the ACC, right? And a possible third with Miami. Let's just say SMU. That way you're getting Clemson out of there, right? So SMU's in there, right? They'll be third. So 5. Who does 5 now become tomorrow night? Tomorrow night, who is 5? I have Notre Dame. Who do you think? I think they'll have Notre Dame at 5, naturally.
Yeah, probably so.
I mean, they could have Penn State. They could have Penn State.
I think it's going to be Oregon. Let's see.
I mean, tomorrow night they're not judging who's going to win that championship game.
Right.
So it's strictly off of who they think's supposed to be there, coming off, Penn State beating Maryland, like drudging Maryland. I don't know. I take that back. I think the more convincing win was Notre Dame over. So let's take that back. I'll put Penn State in there at 5. I think that's a safe spot for Penn State. I think that their victory over Maryland and their loss to Ohio State is better than the loss to Northern Illinois by Notre Dame. And there was a time in that game that Notre Dame played USC that USC gave the ball up. I mean, they threw like 2 pick six in the fourth quarter, and they lost by that. So there was a time in that game where it wasn't as It definitely wasn't a 66-0 like Penn State did against Maryland.
So do you think if you think Notre Dame goes to 5, do you think Georgia goes to 12?
No, I think Penn State goes to 5. I think Notre Dame goes to 6. I think Georgia goes to 7 tomorrow night.
Oh, really?
That's the way I think they're going to cut. Now, this is not me, but this is the way I think the committee will see it tomorrow night. I think Georgia goes to 7 because they've never had Georgia above Penn State or Notre Dame all year, and they're not going to look at Tech as a they're not going to look at Tech as a bigger win than USC. Why, I don't know, but they love Notre Dame, man, and they're not going to look at Penn State's a one-loss team. They're both one-loss teams. They look at losses, not strength of schedule. We've been here, done this. I think Georgia comes in at 7. It's not going to matter. But it may matter a lot when it comes down to how we get seeded if we were to lose in the SEC championship. 8, I think, is going to be where 8 is going to be where I think Ohio State lands. I think that's where Ohio State's going to land. Yeah. I just can't see them. Can't see them putting them above Georgia because of the strength of schedule and because of the fact that Ohio State lost at home against Michigan, especially when Michigan, the president has the opportunity to do this to Ohio State. 9, man, 9. I have Tennessee at 9. I think that's where your third SEC team gets in. 10, I have Indiana. And 12, I have of course, Arizona State. But here's what I'm ready to tell you. Right, here's the 4 teams remaining for that 11th spot: Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Miami, or SMU. Because if Clemson takes that, then obviously SMU slides in there somewhere. I think the only thing happens with Georgia if they lose is they probably go to 8. And why is because they're not going to punish them for. I mean, Ohio State didn't play in a championship game. We beat Tennessee. They didn't play in a championship game. Alabama didn't make it. I mean, any of those SEC teams didn't make it. Indiana didn't make it. I don't think they're going to punish Georgia for going to the championship game. So I think either or Georgia finishes with an opportunity to play a home game if they lose. I know what you're thinking,
because I don't believe
I know what you're thinking.
I think Georgia loses, they're out. We were out last year with 1 loss. What makes you think they're going to put Georgia in with 3 losses?
Because the committee and every ESPN analyst has said it the same way. They said if Georgia wins, Georgia's in if they beat Georgia Tech. They're in the SEC championship and they're in the playoff.
They've said that.
But if they lose this game, they got to win against Texas.
Yeah. Well,
every news places, nobody's showing Georgia out if they lose.
If that happens, then they will show that they are not biased. But I'll have to see it to believe it.
There's no way you're going to keep an SEC. If you do that, Richman, and this is the most power. I don't care what you say. It's the most powerful conference in college football. If you keep the co-champion from the SEC out of the college football playoff, it will open the door wide open for Lane Kiffin and for Kirby and all these other people to go, why do we play the game? Then why do we play the game? We beat Tennessee. We beat them. We beat Texas one time this year. So you're going to punish me because Texas got their revenge? What if it were the opposite way around? Right? What if Texas loses? Now they can't drop out, but should they? Well, I don't know. They don't play a hard schedule.
If Texas loses, they'll be 9-2. They'll be in.
But they don't play a hard schedule?
Since when has this committee cared about a hard schedule, Ted?
Right. But 3 losses, I think, when you look at 3 losses and it's because of the SEC championship, I don't think there's any news crew out there that's calling Georgia losing to Texas out of the playoff. If they do, the SEC meetings will be very, very interesting to where they take this and they do away with this because SEC, remember, Sankey likes to lead. He likes to lead, and he will. If the SEC only represents the 12-team playoff with 2 teams, here's the bigger thing: who gets in then? Because the people that are outside waiting are Alabama with 3 losses, Ole Miss with 3 losses, South Carolina with 3 losses. If Georgia's out, who's in?
Well,
Look
Georgia
at the
lost
AP right now.
Georgia lost to Alabama, so Alabama would, in their mind, go up.
Yeah, but but Alabama got their 3rd loss coincidentally against a Vanderbilt. They would be putting their 3rd loss against a Texas team who won the SEC championship.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at it. Let's look at AP poll, man, right now. So I'm gonna give you the AP poll.
The AP poll doesn't matter. These guys don't care what the AP poll is.
It follows a little bit of it. I mean, if you look at the top 12 right now in the AP, every team in the top 12 right now, besides Alabama, is coincidentally in the 12-team playoff. It's got to matter. So if you look at the people on the outside right now, AP came out and said Miami was 14th. They're out. Ole Miss 9-3. Iowa State. It gets interesting right there, but no matter what, it's either Iowa State or it's either Arizona State at 12. They're null and void. They don't matter. BYU, Big 12, 10-2, doesn't matter. Clemson, they're 18th. They're out. Who's the next team in? Ole Miss won the head-to-head, but they lost 3 games in the regular season. They're not going to keep Georgia out from that. Alabama has 3 losses in the regular season. The only way that South Carolina, Alabama, or Ole Miss, where is Ole Miss? 15th. Yeah, you got South Carolina 13th, Ole Miss 15th, and Alabama 11th. They're showing you right there who they're favoring. If for some reason, if for some reason this gets weird, as far as, it really can't get weird. You might, what you see tomorrow night might be it, with some differences of, where SMU. I think SMU's in. I don't think so, man. I think you're going to hear a lot of this talk tomorrow night, but I can't see it. I don't. You have to explain it to me, and we'll see tomorrow night. But
I have to explain it to you, and I don't understand this committee at all, and I don't believe in them. But
yeah, there's no way. There's no way There's no way Georgia can get punished for playing in the SEC championship when they could have backslided their way in and said, if they said it right now, they're sitting there at 7 and they go, we're good. We don't even want to play this game.
Right,
why do we play this game?
This is what I want to see. I want to see us win the SEC championship, and I want us to play Texas for the national championship and beat them again.
3 times.
That's what I want to see. 3 times in a season.
Tomorrow night, we're going to break down. We'll talk Texas in the bed. We'll talk a little more Texas tomorrow night. We're going to talk early signing day. Weird week to be doing this, right? Yeah. Early signing day is the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Justice Terry, number one defensive lineman in the country, is set to commit over with Georgia and Auburn on Friday. We're going to see where he might go. We want to see if this is going to be Kirby's, best class.
Tell you, we need a Hoss in the middle. That will fix a lot of our defensive problems.
Yeah. I like this Justice Terry. I like this pickup. We don't really we got some. What is going to be? We're going to talk about it tomorrow night. But what is going to be the big flip for Georgia? They always have one big flip that we just don't ever see coming. We're going to talk about who we think that might be, as well as do more Texas. We're gonna watch the live results.
The 5-star Utah receiver that was committed to USC. He pulled back. He pulled back. Wow. So that could be the big flip, because we could definitely use that kid.
Could be. We talk about some guys we signed this week that stayed off the radar because of the Tech game and because of Thanksgiving holidays. So we're talking about recruiting tomorrow night. We're talking a little bit more Texas. We're going to watch the playoff reveal, and we're going to pick all the games tomorrow night. It's going to be exciting.
Did you know Juju got hurt Friday night?
I did not know that.
Yeah, against Hillgrove.
We don't want him anymore then. No, I'm playing.
He's going to Colorado. I just hope he didn't get hurt too bad so he can play next year.
Yeah, no, I get it, man.
Otherwise,
I get it, man.
He might be in the portal before he ever hits the field.
Yeah, you ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. Special guest tomorrow night. Myself, I'm sure Richman's going to be here. Fish is going to be in the house, and Mr. Bobby Riles is going to join us tomorrow night. We're going to have a full house tomorrow night to talk about a little college football playoff. We're going to spend most of the night talking about this playoff stuff. We're going to hit recruiting. We're going to hit Texas, and we're going to pick the games. Not as many games to pick this week. So we get to spend a lot of time on this will be the last time before we actually know what the committee is going to do that stays and sticks. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. We're going to see what happens. I think we're going to make a believer out of Richman. Richman, we're not worried about losing. We're not worried about it, but I will tell you that it'll be a cold day in hell if they put Georgia out of the entire playoff by losing the SEC championship, because that just means that the team that's going to take it over is going to have to be a 3-loss team that lost a regular season game, and I just can't see it happen. So it shows no value for the championship games. And if that's the case, then how can you value Notre Dame when they don't even have a championship game and they lost Northern Illinois as their one loss? So it's going to be a cold day in hell if that happens. But you know what? We're going to talk about 2 scenarios. We're going to talk about the one that we're depending on, which is us beating Texas, and the one that we just kind of dabble out there and let the dog fans know that they can maybe take a little bit lower dose of their blood pressure pill this week. So, if anything, I don't know. I mean, do you? We'll even talk about this scenario. Do you lose a game because you know you're going to get a home game, and is the path at 2 harder than the path at 5, 6, 7, 8? I don't know. We'll talk about it tomorrow night.
Don't even go there, man. That's too funny.
I mean, we'll look at it. I got it all panned out, man. But anyways, for myself, Richman, Green, hey man, we another Georgia Tech victory, 10-2 season. We are happy to be playing overtime. Hey, guess what? We're going into our 9th overtime. So we're playing overtime football this week because this game's always on the schedule, but it's never guaranteed, and we get to play it this week. So all eyes will be on the SEC and Georgia this week.
This Georgia Tech game was so classic. A good friend of mine said in the 4th quarter he sent his buddy friend of ours from Tech congratulations and took his dog for a walk. When he came back in, he's like, "Oh my God, we're only 1 score down."
I bet there was a lot of stories that out there that didn't sit well when it was all said and done. I heard worse ones though from Ohio State and Michigan. So
I'm mad at the dogs. I'm gonna go walk my dog.
Yeah, there you go, man. Listen, I told you. I had my whole spiel on how I was going to congratulate, and I still do. I congratulate Tech fans, man. What a gutsy game by Tech. Great game plan. Those kids played physical. Their hearts out. You can tell that Tech is on their schedule, and that their coach sits them at a very high level of what we need to do to win the recruiting rivalry in Georgia, because I think that's a huge part of it. If you can win the recruiting rivalry in such fertile soil as Georgia, then it's a great start in winning that battle for a long, long time. And so
right.
I think that's where Key's going with that. But anyways, Richman, as always, enjoyed it. We're going to get off for the night. We will see you tomorrow night, somewhere around 7:00 is the playoff reel. Will probably hop on a little earlier, maybe even hop on a little later, but we'll go from there. We'll let everybody know. For myself, Richman, you guys have a great night, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.